Free agencies tomorrow. I think the Rebel Alliance are going to be very active, and I think the Atlanta Thrashers are going to be very active tomorrow. I have a good feeling about this. Now, 1992 yearbook. Oh, all kinds of names I don't recognize. I'll save this for July. I honestly don't understand the panic. You know, your team finishes at the bottom of the league for about 10 years. And the fans hear the coach, Todd McClellan, saying this core isn't good enough. The effort's not there. Something's got to give. So I make videos where I talk about Eberle. People are like, Eberle's not going anywhere. You talk about Hopkins, you get, oh no, they don't want to lose Hopkins. Well, I can't get rid of Draisaitl. Draisaitl's young. Taylor Hall, you can't get rid of Taylor Hall. He's a superstar. Clearly, McDavid's not going anywhere. Okay, well, wait a second. Do you want to accept mediocrity or do you want to move up? Nobody's giving players away. Right-handed defensemen with potential to be power play guys, guys who can hit. Yeah, you're not getting them. You're not getting them at the trade deadline. The only time you're getting them is now. Chiarelli's trying to change the culture in Edmonton. You have to move out some of the star players to do that. I thought it would be Eberle, but Hall works too. When they won the draft lottery by getting Puljujarvi, when Columbus insanely went to Dubois instead, and I get Columbus, that's their player, and I hope he does well for them because I like Columbus. But when they got another talented winger, and they're in the running for Lucic, and I'll get to that in a minute, this trade isn't a bad trade. Even Chiarelli himself said when they drafted Puljujarvi, it made somebody in that top six expendable, and it became Taylor Hall. Hall took it really hard. McDavid's taken it really hard. But there's a culture in Edmonton, and Chiarelli has to change it. It can't just be, I'm going to go play with my buddies. I'm playing with my friends. It's like Taylor Hall said, well, I wanted to be part of the solution. Then play better. And I say that, I know he was probably Edmonton's best player, and he had 65 points last year, but there's no urgency with the Oilers. And there's an acceptance that sets in at some point every single year of, well, we're screwed. And then they start laying eggs. Their games are just terrible. And I guess after 10 years of watching it, Oilers fans have become accepting of it. And maybe they're okay with having star players that aren't the players you need if you want to win a Stanley Cup. I'm not, like I said yesterday, Jersey's going to make the playoffs now. And I mean that. Because Taylor Hall's going to be motivated, and he'll probably score 40 in New Jersey. And fans in Edmonton will cry and scream for years. But I remember fans in Vancouver screaming because Michael Grabner got traded to Florida, gets waived, goes to the Islanders, and scores 30 his first year. And everybody went apeshit. And I didn't. I said he's overachieving. And I remember getting absolutely buried on the Canucks forum for saying it. And for saying he's Peter Klima. Right away I was like, he's Peter Klima, he's either scoring goals or he's invisible. He's useless out there. And I got buried. And now here we are, 5 years later? He had 9 goals for Toronto. His contract was buried there. And he's a free agent and nobody's talking about him. The flash and dash are fine. But if you want to win, you need guys like Larson. The Oilers pick up Demers. That's another piece of the puzzle. The flash and dash have not won anything in Edmonton. So it's time to change policy. Lucic is choosing between Edmonton and Dallas. He told Vancouver they're out. Thank God. Now I get to listen to Canucks fans for the next however long. See, it's funny. While on the East Coast, Leafs fans are being laughed at for Stamkos talk, right? Oh, we're all mocking Leafs fans for Stamkos talk. Stamkos is coming home for a hometown discount, and we're mocking them like, oh, they're not going home. Vancouver has no right to mock anybody. My only statement was, I made a video a month ago saying Stamkos was a bad fit for Toronto, and a lot of people downvoted me and told me I was wrong. Apparently Stamkos thinks I was right, because he's staying in Tampa, which is a great place for him to play hockey. And he took a discount in order to see Yzerman keep that core together and make it work and get to a cup and hopefully win it. Because he's in his prime, and I'm sure he wants to win multiple Stanley Cups. And he can do that in Tampa, and there's no telling what's going to happen in Toronto. Toronto's got a bunch of puzzle pieces they just threw out of a box. We don't know how they're going to come together in October. We don't know if they're the same puzzle, if it's going to fit together, or if something's going to have to change at middle of the year, and they'll be right back where they started. We don't know. It was about 5 or 6 years ago. Florida went out and signed, 7 or 8 free agents. They signed everybody, and everybody went nuts. Like, Florida's fantastic, and they're going to be. And no, they were out of the playoff hunt, and they were selling by the deadline. So no, you can't tell. But in Edmonton, Chiarelli wants out of the draft lottery. Toronto wants out of the draft lottery. Vancouver, we're still wiping up our tears from Lucic, apparently. But it's not news. I remember when Marian Gaborik was coming up for free agency, and I saw posts on the Canuck board like, well, Gaborik's coming here. Gaborik's coming here. He's buying a house in Vancouver. And then he didn't sign in Vancouver, and everybody flipped out. And then with Luch, it's the same thing about a year ago, when Boston traded him to LA. I saw all these Canucks posters going, "That's fine, it's fine. He'll sign as a free agent in Vancouver anyways." So we didn't get him in trade, but it's fine because we'll get him next year as a free agent. He wants to come home. You're basing that on what? The whole Stamkos thing was based on him liking a tweet by accident. Something about him looking good as a Maple Leaf, whatever it was, and him liking that tweet, and then it turned into this big thing. Stamkos wants to be a Leaf. Yeah, he's going to reveal that on Twitter. Yeah, he's going to do that. That's exactly how a professional athlete still playing for another team is going to reveal his secret desire to play somewhere else. Twitter, liking somebody else's tweet. That's how it's going to work. Nope. Stamkos isn't stupid. I'm sure Yzerman pulled him into an office somewhere and goes, "So, Toronto?" And Stamkos was probably like, "You know what, Steve, I'm sorry. Mr. Yzerman," whatever, if they're on first name basis, I don't know, probably. But anyways, we'll just go, "Mr. Yzerman." It just came up in my feed. I went to click it off, and I accidentally clicked the little heart to like it, and it's easy. It's whatever. And so Leafs fans ran with it, and for whatever reason, Vancouver fans ran with the idea that Lucic was going to come home. Even though he has hated Vancouver for years. He's hated the Canucks. He ran over Ryan Miller in Buffalo. Never gave him an apology for it, obviously. He cheap shotted the Canucks into the ground every time he played them for the last 5 years. And now free agency is going to go, "Oh, my first choice would be Vancouver." No. He did the nice thing, came to Vancouver, he talked to the mayor. That might have made him decide not to go to Vancouver. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the mayor of Vancouver. He went through the process with Vancouver, and then he went to the teams that he really wanted to go to. He went to Edmonton first and Dallas second. And of course, on the Canucks forum, so why would he want to sign at Edmonton? Edmonton's a shithole. Edmonton in January and February is insanely cold. But in terms of cities, the northern side of the city is rough. But you get to the south side of Edmonton, and you get to that part near, you get to that river valley. It's a beautiful city. There are parts of Edmonton that are beautiful. Spruce Grove, just outside of Edmonton, is absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely beautiful little community, and it's perfect for raising a family. There's all kinds of areas around Edmonton that are revitalized, and it's a growing area. And I know economically it's going to be having problems because of the oil fields and all of that, issue with Alberta. But for a hockey player, he's not affected by the Alberta oil sands and all that problem. He just sees a growing community, and he sees a brand new arena, and they're revitalizing the downtown core, and he wants to be part of that. I honestly think he signs in Edmonton. Dallas. Dallas is a good spot for Lucic, and while I wasn't a fan of him going to my Canucks, I might be okay with him going to my Stars, because the idea of having Ben, Sagan, and Lucic, oh boy. If we can fix our goaltending in Dallas, the Stanley Cup is going back to Dallas for the first time since 1999. I'm not saying this year, but if Lucic signs in Dallas, it'll happen. They just need a goalie. This is when you get rid of Leighton or Niemi and you pick up James Reimer and you make him the starter. This is what you do for Jim Nill. Message for Jim Nill. It's a good fit. I mean, yeah, he could have played with the Sedins in Vancouver, and the Sedins put up 60 points each. If he can play with Jamie Benn and Tyler Sagan, you going to tell me that Lucic doesn't score 70 points? 75? 80? Look, he's on a line with two of the best scorers in the NHL. And he's not going to score 80 points? Yeah, he'll score 80 points. At least 60. You put him in a lineup with those guys, he scores at least 60. And in Edmonton, he's playing with who? McDavid, Puljujarvi? He's going to score a ton of points. This isn't just about money. Who are you playing with? What can you bring to the team? How well are you going to fit in? Is that team going up or going down? And I'm sorry, but if they trade Taylor Hall for Adam Larson, and then they pick up at Milan Lucic because they got room for him by trading away Taylor Hall, that's a win for Edmonton. And I'm sorry to all the people who are ready to jump off a bridge in Edmonton. And there's bridges in Edmonton you can go jump off of if you want to. I don't suggest it because it's not worth it, but it's hockey. This is the business of hockey. And sometimes these lopsided trades turn out the other way. I remember there was a kid in Vancouver. Very few people knew about him. Pavel Bure. He got traded to Florida, and the kid that we got back was some nobody. It was actually a really bad trade because all we got back was we got Dave Gagne, which Brian Burke insisted on. Dave Gagne was the key to the trade, and then just some throw-in named Ed Jovanovski. Ed Jovanovski was a high draft pick. He was big, he was strong, good hitter. Hadn't realized his offensive potential, probably never was going to do that. And the Canucks traded their most dynamic player for him. So yeah, Burke got raked over the coals. Sound familiar? Was way worse. Bure had scored 50 goals, 60 goals. Taylor Hall scored 26 last year. Oh, different eras. Whatever. Bure was the most dynamic goal scorer in the NHL. He was the Ovechkin of that time. Taylor Hall isn't. Jovanovski, at the time he was traded to Vancouver, was viewed as a potential bust. Larson is not. If he'd been traded 2 years ago, he would have been. He's not. He's had 2 full years in the NHL, and he's been fantastic. No, he hasn't lived up to potential yet, but he could. And Jovo Kopp became a pretty good defenseman for the Canucks. And we forgot about Bure pretty quick after that because the Canucks started to turn things around a couple years later, and Jovanovski was a big part of the blue line once Naslund and Bertuzzi and all these guys developed. So, yeah, we lost Bure, the most dynamic forward in the history of Vancouver, and we got back a defenseman who had underachieved. Worked out pretty well. Dave Gagne scored 2 goals and was gone at the end of the year. And while you may look at that and say, "Oh, Burke, yeah, ha, ha, ha," but Gagne became a strength and conditioning guy for the Canucks. So that trade helped the organization, even if it didn't help the team, because Gagne's had ties to the Canucks, or had ties to the Canucks for quite a while after that, working with players during rehab and stuff like that. So it's that stuff you don't think of at the time. It's very easy to get emotional. Oh, we traded PK. The game PK plays, he's going to get injured. He's going to get injured. He's going to make bad passes, and he's going to drive his coach nuts. Weber, right now, is the better defenseman. Stop thinking 5 years down the road. Because that contract is easy to move 5 years down the road. Because, yeah, it's a big cap hit with a lot of years left, but he's not getting paid very much money. Oh, he's going to retire. Good, then the cap recapture goes to Nashville. Montreal's not on the hook for the cap if he retires. Nashville is. There's no way that Montreal has lost this trade right now. It's true. If PK tears it up and Weber blows it in Montreal, Bergevin's out of a job. But right now, today, they haven't played a game for their new team yet. You can't declare a winner. Everybody wants to declare a winner. Every trade, all the time. Maybe what I need to do is go through all these hockey books I got here. I still haven't found a bloody bookshelf. I don't know. Does nobody have books anymore? I go to all the stores where I used to get bookshelves 15, 20 years ago, and they don't have them. I go into the brick and I'm like, I'm just looking for, I got a bunch of stuff that I need to store. Just, it could even be just, decent sized ottoman kind of thing. And just the guy was like, didn't do one of these, like he had no idea. I was like, oh boy, this is super. So I guess we'll see what happens with all of this, because I need to find a place to put all these books, especially the ones that I'm ordering. I didn't get the 1986 one today, so thanks to Canada Post strike, I'm not going to get it till after the Canada Post strike, but whatever. It's been 30 years I haven't had it, so what's another month or month and a half? But I should go through these books and find trades that were seen at the time as, oh, they're horrible. Because this is the crazy time of year, and tomorrow it's going to get worse. Because there are fans who think along the lines of, we need to sign all the free agents, bring them all. So the Canucks should sign Eriksson, and Brouwer, and Nielsen, and Demers, and bring them all in. It's not how it works. You're competing with 29 other GMs. That's just not how it works. And if you're a GM in the NHL, and I'm a GM in the NHL of the Hoth Resistance Fighters, fantastic new expansion team. I'm very excited about Gary Bettman's expansion to Hoth. I think it's a natural cold environment. They were going to call it the Wampas, but they won't. It's a copy. It's a George Lucas thing, so it's going to be the Hoth Freedom Fighters or Resistance Fighters. They're still working on that. But if I'm the Hoth GM and you're a GM of Vegas, you're trying to screw me over, I'm trying to screw you over. That's kind of the nature of the game. Now, if you're a GM and I'm a GM, we're friends, and we've worked together before, we may sit down and say, okay, you need this, and I have it, and I need this, and you have it. But in general, the GMs aren't going into it that way. They don't. they're not trading you a guy and thinking, boy, I really hope he has a great year next year, and I really hope you guys make the playoffs. I'll be so happy if you guys make the playoffs. No, all I'm worried about is this is what my team needs, and you've got it. I want it. Give it to me. I get it. Cool. She really saying all the right things about Taylor Hall. He doesn't give a shit about Taylor Hall now. Taylor Hall is now a New Jersey Devil. All he cares about is Adam Larson, his team, and the core he's trying to put together. And he's absolutely right to do it that way. He wants a winner. And if you're in Edmonton, you should too. And if you're in Vancouver, it's not going to be easy. If you're in Toronto, even without Stamkos, you're further ahead of the game right now than you were before. And believe me, the money you saved by not signing Stamkos for how much money he would have needed to come to Canada, because the tax breaks in Florida, that $8.5 million is all his. And in Canada, he'd need at least $11 million to make up for the difference, considering all the taxes and bullshit in Canada. But if Toronto takes the money that they saved, and they sign an Okposo, and a Hamhuis, and say a Stempniak, they've had Stempniak before, so let's say they sign 3 guys. You fill a lot of holes right there. And that's really more what Toronto needs than that star player. That star player, before you can attract him, you need to build the foundation, or it's not going to work. Toronto's building that foundation. So rather than get all caught up in what you don't have, think about what you're getting. Because starting tomorrow, it's going to change for some teams. And not all fans are going to be happy. And I've realized something. And I've known this before, but it's become very apparent to me now. Montreal fans are always miserable, always, forever, and ever, and ever, and ever. They've buried every single fucking trade they've made for the last 30 years. Every trade Montreal makes, Montreal fans kick and scream and whine and cry and bitch. Constantly. Every single time. And it's to the point where it's part of the reason I hate the Montreal Canadiens. It's the constant negativity from the fan base. And it backs a GM into a corner that he can't do anything about because he doesn't have a Stanley Cup championship team. And Carey Price can't do it all by himself. And there's something that was going on in that Montreal locker room. And you don't know and I don't know what it was. It'll come out. Hockey players talk. And whether it accidentally slips out during an interview with Thomas Plekanec when he's over talking in Czech, and he forgets that his interview is going to get translated and sent back here, it happens with players a lot in Europe. And then they deny it. Oh, that's misquoted. No. You just didn't know that we were going to translate it to English and find out what you really thought of your teammates. But something was going on in that locker room, and Bergevin did what he could to fix it. And I think Shea Weber is one hell of a fix. And if you're going to bitch and complain about the last 2 games he played against San Jose, you need to watch every other game he played in the playoffs because he was fantastic. He had a bad 2 games against San Jose. Here's the key. Or against St. Louis. No, it was San Jose. Because it was Dallas lost to St. Louis. But here's the key. So did Roman Josi. Roman Josi didn't look great against San Jose either, those last couple of games. Because Josi and Weber were played into the ground in Nashville. It was them every second shift. And it was long shifts. And it was brutal. And I felt bad for both of them. They were run down by the end of that series. And then everybody picks Shea Weber's game apart. And it's like, this isn't fair. He has been absolutely destroyed throughout the playoffs. It's not his fault. And we'll see if PK is able to handle that kind of ice time and that kind of pressure in a playoff series. Remains to be seen. Anyways, that's my 2 cents as we head into free agency and I watch fans scramble and panic because we were supposed to get the Luciches and we were supposed to get the Stamkoses and we were supposed to trade for Carey Price because why not? And all I think right now as a Boston fan is Thank God Seidenberg's got bought out today. There's a God in the universe, and he likes the Bruins. Maybe we're getting a free agent tomorrow. Maybe that's why they freed up the cap space. But at least they used some of that cap space to bring Torrey Krug on for 4 more years. And as long as Torrey Krug's got 4 more years in a Bruins jersey, I'm fucking ecstatic. I love that kid. I'm so happy he's a Bruin. And 4 more years, I get to watch him on that point on the power play. And their power play will never be shit. Not really, as long as Krug's out there. And don't bring up stats because I don't want to hear it, because Torrey Krug is my favorite defenseman in the NHL. He's amazing. Char's getting older, but Krug's the future. The future's a mighty might named Torrey Krug. All right, that's it from me for today. I wish the Atlanta Thrashers good luck tomorrow. I wish the Rebels luck tomorrow. I know I'm going out on a limb, but I think the Atlanta Thrashers have an excellent chance at the Stanley Cup because nobody's picking the Atlanta Thrashers. Why doesn't the NHL expand to Atlanta? I mean, they've only given them 2 chances. They should give them a third chance. You can call them the Atlanta hat tricks, and they can use like an amalgamation of the A and the Thrasher. You put like the Thrasher beak on the flaming A, and then have like the number 3 in there somewhere. It could be like this fantastically ugly thing, and then they win the cup because no hockey fan would ever want to see that abomination anywhere near it. Which is why Ryan Kessler should win a cup, because he's an abomination and I don't want him anywhere near it. Yes, I got to dig in at Kessler. All right, thanks for watching.